Welcome back to Stop Feeling Like Shit. I'm your host, Daniela Korth, with Dr. Buzz, and we already know he's my favorite person in the world. So, Nick Andrews, welcome back. We can't get enough of you. Let me tell you, you've been on multiple episodes, and we're always talking about peptides
Yes.
because we love peptides. And on today's episode, we're talking about NMN versus NAD plus.
Yes.
I'm excited about this one because we get that a lot. Hey, do you know anything about NAD plus? And then they'll say, oh, well, I take NMN.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times they think that's the same thing as NAD plus. So let's jump into it. First, Nick, tell us what's NMN?
So NMN is one of the molecules you get when you break down NAD. So NMN is naturally occurring in various fruits and plants, just is that molecular fraction. And your body can't use it directly, relative to what people are taking as a supplement or other forms, that's just massively more than you would ever find in a particular fruit or vegetable. It's very, very small amounts. And the idea behind NNM is that when you ingest it, some gets destroyed in your stomach, not all of it. Unlike peptides, it can reasonably survive going through the stomach. And then once it's in the bloodstream, your cells pick up NNM and transport it inside the cell where it's converted into NAD for the mitochondria to use. So people, a fair portion of the audience at least, has probably heard of the NAD test, whether it's a finger prick or something else, that like, hey, let's measure my NAD levels. I took my favorite brand of NMN at 1,000 milligrams a day for the last week, and oh look, my NAD plus levels are higher, so that's awesome. That's good, right? And it is definitely a good thing. NAD. So NAD is essentially the parent molecule. NAD does not survive passing through the digestive process nearly as well.
You can't take NAD pills.
Correct. They're very similar to peptides. And to be entirely blunt and taking no sides, my sister takes an oral NAD and she swears by it. She will say it doesn't compare to the iontophoresis patches in any way, shape, or form. But I think people who are really struggling with health conditions, if you're not already in at least a reasonable baseline of health, then the small amount that does get through may be noticeable to some people. Mm-hmm. But for most people who, they don't even have to be like uber optimized or pro athlete, but at a base solid health level, you're probably not going to notice much from it unless you were just taking epic amounts. So there's another big difference between the two as well. So what a lot of people don't realize, even honestly doctors I've spoken to, is people think, oh, NAD mitochondria, so it just basically you have a supply of NAD in your cells for the mitochondria, right? And like that's what they do. It's not really how it works. So you actually have two NAD pools, two NAD reserves in your body. One is inside the cells, one is outside the cells. Because, going back to high school, the thing, and people might actually remember this because they hated it so much, but that big confusing circle diagram, the Krebs cycle, here's how the mitochondria works, and your evil teacher made you memorize the 400 different coenzymes on it. And, half the people failed the test. So, yes, it does that. That's what's going on in the mitochondria. But what NAD also does is it actually directly interacts with the immune system and other functions in the body outside of the mitochondrial process, outside of the Krebs cycle. So you actually have two pools. You'll see that as a general descriptive term for it, right? The only thing is like two gas tanks. Yeah. So you have one gas tank of NAD for your mitochondria for producing energy that is inside the cells. And you have another gas tank of NAD that's outside of the cells, whether in the interstitial space or in the bloodstream, that supplies the cells. So it does two things. That second gas tank helps continually supply NAD to the cells and keep those tanks full. But it also interacts with the immune system, inflammation, various other pathways outside of the cells. So NMN, since it's only a fragment of NAD, it really only works, for the most part, inside of the cell directly with the mitochondria.
Mm.
So you're getting a fraction of the bigger systemic effects of NAD with NMN. So another quick question, if you don't want me jumping ahead, that we run into all the time. And for example, at A4M, we ran into this a lot, right? Hey, I can go do these mitochondrial NAD plus tests, right? And I've been using a patch, or maybe they were working with their doctor and doing NAD plus injections or NAD infusions, right? And I don't see a big increase in my mitochondrial NAD levels, right? Hey, I just did a 1,000 milligram infusion a week ago. Why don't I see anything, right? Part of the challenge with the existing tests, and somebody absolutely could make a test for this, but NAD is not taken directly into a cell. Everybody's seen a picture of a cell, the cell wall, and you have all the little mechanisms that act like conveyor belts for bringing things in and out of the cell, right? Mm-hmm. NAD itself is not the primary thing that those conveyor belts bring into the cell. So generally speaking, you have enzymes that take the NAD, they cut it up into multiple small pieces, and those smaller pieces are picked up by the conveyor belts and brought into the cell. So at least the ones I'm familiar with anyway, most of the tests on the market that are measuring mitochondrial NAD plus levels are doing it looking directly for NAD. But if you're using exogenous NAD, meaning whether you're getting it as an injection, an infusion, an iontophoresis patch, none of those tests that I'm aware of, as I said, are directly measuring the levels in the blood. You can find some research papers where they do it for research purposes, and it's absolutely there. And that's a whole nother fascinating discussion. It's doing all kinds of stuff. But when the NAD, whether it was a patch, an infusion, whatever, it's going to get to the cells, and then the cells basically chop up the NAD molecule, bring it into the cell. And now this comes back to that annoying diagram everybody hated in high school. And if you pull up on the internet, you just close it because you're like, nah, I don't want to even look at that. My brain hurts.
Yeah, Google Krebs cycle.
So what happens?
Sleep aid.
Yeah.
Is the easiest way to describe it is a Krebs cycle is kind of like a little mini factory, right? So if I have a factory making widgets, right, you have 15 different machines and production lines all doing their own little thing to produce the widget, right? So to produce the widget, you can bring raw materials in of different types, maybe plastic here, maybe paint here, whatever, right? So when the NAD gets chopped up and brought into the cell, essentially all those fragments that NAD is chopped up into are fed into different parts of the Krebs cycle. And what that means at the end of the day, since somebody cares about the nerd babble, is that the NAD is functionally there, but now it's in all those other pieces. NAD by itself is only one little branch on the Krebs cycle when there's something like 12 or 15 branches on the Krebs cycle. When you're using exogenous NAD, it's coming in through multiple of those 12, 15 branches. And the tests on the market aren't looking for that. They're looking directly for the NAD itself. And this circles back to NNM. So when you take NNM, what happens is NNM is one of the fragments that NAD gets chopped into. The reason NNM was put on the market as a supplement, well, hey, that's an easy precursor to NAD, because what happens with it is it's brought into the cell via all those little conveyor belts, and then it's taken to the mitochondria. And then NNM actually can be rebuilt back directly into NAD with all those other fragments. Mm-hmm. So now your cell has created more NAD inside of itself with all the little pieces of NMN. So with NMN, different pathways do different things. Long story short, NMN basically can notably boost the pathway for assembling NAD inside the cell. So by giving it a whole bunch of NMN, the cell, your body, you're really juicing that pathway inside the cell. That's going to make a lot of NAD right then and there for the mitochondria to use. But what you have to realize is, yes, you have this one pathway with NMN, you have multiple other pathways. So you have a molecule called adenosine, and you have other variations of adenosine. So another word people probably remember from high school, biology maybe, ATP, right? Adenosine triphosphate. Yep. So several of the other molecules that NAD gets chopped up into are adenosine compounds, and those adenosine compounds can directly fuel the mitochondria as well. So this whole long ramble boiled down the point of it is that NMN, there's nothing wrong with it. It can be great, right? It's fueling essentially one, maybe two specific pathways into mitochondrial energy production, and only within the cell. It's not having really systemic effects like that the extracellular pool of NAD does. So you are improving cellular respiration, the production of energy in the cell, via the mitochondria. With NAD, you're doing that, plus you're doing more. So you're engaging all those other mechanisms, and you're engaging multiple pathways in the cell to energy production.
So really, NMN, you're getting half the benefit. So it's not bad for you, but you're not getting the full benefit of NAD. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then really the only way to get NAD levels really up is either to do an IV or ionto patch. You can also inject it, but it does have such a strong effect on the mitochondria that it's back to the same thing. You're going to have to inject multiple times a day to equal a patch, or sit on an IV. The IV, I think, is a 3 to 4 hour IV to get a pretty minor dose. Because if you do that too fast, once again, the effect of the mitochondria is you don't feel good. And, I think NAD became really hot because if anyone's listening, if you've never done like an NAD, either ionto patch or IV, like you get your levels up, you feel amazing. Like your cognitive ability, your mental clarity. But it's not a stimulant, but it also helps your sleep pattern, which is a weird thing, right? But like it helps so many things. We've seen people that have real bad pulse ox, their pulse ox, which is the oxygen in their blood, improves, kidney functions improve. Weird like nail fungus cures, like all these weird things, like because NAD makes your cells work better. So anything that involves your cells, which is everything, does better when your NAD levels are restored to a good level. And by the time we're age 40, our natural NAD levels are about half what they were when you're younger. So that means your cells are really working at half the efficiency as when you're younger. Using NAD, whether it's with ionto or with IV, allows you to elevate those levels to like a young person and get your cellular, double your cellular production, really, or double the ability of your cells to produce energy, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And if anyone's never experienced it, I have patients, quite a patient called the other day, man, I just feel terrible. I feel like crap. Like my little cheat code is, get some patches and try those. Because if you take the patches and don't feel better, something's really wrong with you. Something's broke. Like when you wear those patches, your energy just goes through the roof. And even working out, Nick, I think you can attest this too. Like it's like a simple thing, like any type of workout.
You don't get tired.
But
you're like, dude, I did my circuit, and I guess I'm going to do it again because I don't feel tired yet.
It's the craziest thing. Like, and you're stronger too. I would say like 10 to 20% stronger, which is a lot. And your ability to work out is crazy. Yeah, I'm 53 years old, and I work out with teenagers, and I'll kick their ass when I'm my patch.
Yeah, no joke. If I wear a patch to the gym on a lot of exercises I do, I can just outright add a plate.
Yeah, it's crazy. So if you haven't done it, I mean, everyone's got to try it once.
I'm gonna wear one tomorrow because I got legs. So
I was wearing leg too because I like to work out with my son. I like to kick his ass. So
yeah.
So 2 other good examples I just for comparison, and also an informational point is, so some people listening to this have either know somebody who's done an IV infusion or have done it themselves, right?
Mhm.
And one of the reasons a patch may be a better option for some people is if you've done it or you've talked to somebody who's done an IV infusion, they're not always all that much fun. So besides being stuck to an IV, sitting in a chair for 3 or 4 hours, having it dosed that quickly can cause some discomfort, from nausea, headache, tightness on the chest, just because so much is being dumped into the bloodstream so quickly. Once again, coming back to time under dose curves with NAD through a patch, it's not just being essentially slammed straight into the bloodstream. It's a slow, steady delivery over 8, 12, 16 hours. So your body kind of has a chance to digest it. It's kind of going to a restaurant. You have this awesome meal in front of you. If you just gorge on it in 5 minutes flat, you're like, oh, dude, it was great, right? But now I got a stomach ache, right? Versus like, no, we're just going to chat, take our time. I'm going to enjoy this meal over the next hour. You enjoyed the meal. You feel great. It was a good evening. The other aspect to that is that a common response with an NAD IV infusion is either by the time you're done, for some people can be delayed a little bit, maybe the next morning. You're like, oh my God, I feel like Superman right now, right? Because you just got all of it right now. It's almost like a sugar high, right? Like, oh my God, I just ate 2 pints of Ben and Jerry's, and like now I'm like buzzing on sugar, right? Same sort of thing. Since NAD is a slow, steady delivery, depending on your health state, your physiology, your lifestyle, sometimes it can take so usually with the patches, we recommend 2 or 3 days in a row when you first start them. And that being because, especially if you have, middle age or later, or have, various health challenges, it can take a little while for your body to really start to begin to use all that NAD to the point that you're like, oh yeah, like I'm feeling it now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
another cool mechanism, Nick, that one of the main reasons NAD became really popular in the US was its use for addiction.
oh,
Which
that's
is a
why.
crazy thing. Yeah.
So
So
oh, go ahead.
maybe you could explain the mechanism on that, but like I can't tell you how many patients we've had that do the patches and like they'll say, man, I don't crave alcohol. I don't crave like these weird things they had cravings for. It gets rid of these cravings.
So honestly, that's an open area of research because there's still so many questions there. But at a base level, we do know what's going on. So you have somebody dealing with addiction, whatever it is, whether it's opiates, whether it's alcohol, whether it's anything else, is whatever substance it is driving the addiction. You're essentially driving the neurotransmitters out of balance because you're always chasing the buzz, the high, whatever it is, right? You're always juicing those neurotransmitters, and your brain starts to get depleted. Honestly, even somebody who's legitimately therapeutically using something like Adderall, if you talk to them like, hey, you take your dose in the morning, and they're like, dude, by the end of the day, my brain is just like cooked, and like I don't feel great, right? But it got me through the day. And I've actually given a few patches to a few people who legitimately use Adderall because of the diagnosed state, and they're like, holy cow, like I don't feel fried at the end of the day. I still kind of feel normal, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're essentially juicing your body, always producing those neurotransmitters, whichever ones it is, depending on the compound and everything else, it's like trying to go to the gym every day of the week, right? Your body just can't keep up and is struggling, and other things start to sacrifice, things start to break, not work properly, kind of like not changing the oil in your car sort of thing.
Yep.
So when you add the NAD is working through multiple pathways, especially in neurochemistry. So in neurochemistry, whether through its addiction or even brain fog because of COVID or some other inflammatory state, is what happens is you start to get excess oxidative stress. And when neurons start to experience excess oxidative stress, they shift more into a protective mode instead of doing their job. So, that's brain fog. I feel burned out. Instead of producing neurotransmitters they're supposed to be producing or doing whatever else they need to be doing, they're like, well, I'm just kind of trying to stay alive right here. So I'm not focusing on my main job. So when you bring in NAD, suddenly, hey, I have all, like you were talking about before, how, whether it's healing, this, that, when you provide more energy for everything your body does, everything it does better.
Right.
So now your neurochemistry, your neurology, your brain, your neurons, now that it has this extra energy and it's not basically starved from overworking, whether it's addiction or anything else, now it can say, hey, wait, I have enough energy to do my job and to fix things. So a stupid analogy, if you really don't have enough food to eat every day, you're not really going to be focused on fixing the leak in your roof or, the sink in your bathroom or whatever else it is. Because you're like, dude, I can barely get out of bed. I just got to take care of the basic things to get everybody fed and go to work, right? I'm not going to worry about fixing the house.
Right.
Well, you get all the food you could want now. So now you're raring to go. Like, yeah, take care of the family, go to work, come home. I'm going to jump up on the roof and fix the leak in the roof, and then go fix the bathroom. So the point of that being is, in an addiction state, generally speaking, the struggle is that as soon as somebody starts coming off of whatever those compounds are, well, that's what they got to a point where that's what was driving the neurotransmitter production. And you have both behavioral and biological effects that cascade down from that. And that cascade kind of starts to collapse once you take away the substance, because that was what was keeping them going. Their body had adapted to that. So suddenly you have the standard addiction thing. Like, I can't stop because I can't function. I feel like garbage, and I'm only functional when I'm using this.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's give yourselves, your brain, throughout your entire body, basically so much energy that, that cascade's going to start not working like it was as we bring you off of this substance. But there's enough energy now where the normal cascades, the normal pathways can kick right in and start doing their thing.
Brings you back to homeostasis.
Yep. Yeah, you said that in 2 words, what I said in 10 minutes.
So to summarize, so basically, NAD plus, really the only way you can get it effectively is via IV iontophoresis patch or injection. Iontophoresis patch would be the preferred method because I think NAD half-life is about an hour. So think of with the ionto patches like getting dosed over 12 hours or 14 hours, depending on what patch you wear. So your time under dose or TUD is going to be much more sustainable than getting an injection or an IV. NMN increases intracellular NAD levels, but not extracellular levels. So while it's not bad for you, you're only getting half the benefit because half of the benefits are increasing those extracellular levels too.
Yeah.
So
it's all about options, right? I mean, for example, my parents, I've tried to get them to wear a patch. They're not going to do it, right? And there's no way they're ever going to go get an IV or an injection for that matter. So I have them take NMN, right? So yeah, hey, that's better than doing nothing.
right.
Right.
And also, just to be frank, for somebody who's really price sensitive, NMN is probably going to be a more realistic option.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, patches, obviously I have a conflict of interest here. Patches are, in most cases, the best option for NAD delivery. And the cool thing is, if you do the math, they're generally way cheaper for an equivalent dose as IV. But everybody has to make their own choice. Some people, hey, I just like IV, so that's what I do. Cool.
Yep.
That works. So it's a matter of using the tool that works for you in the best way you can based on your resources.
And when people say, well, do I need NAD plus? Well, the great thing about NAD plus is everyone can benefit from it, right? People use it for overall wellness and anti-aging benefits. And then also you have people that are sick that benefit from it too. So you're in these categories where I feel like, when I talk to people and we're talking about like, okay, what's going on with you? And then you're kind of like over here, one minute you're thinking, oh, you might benefit from this peptide, but then they keep talking. I'm like, oh my gosh, no, NAD plus is the route for you, because NAD plus really, like you were saying earlier, it's just great for overall all these things, sleeping, energy. We know several people that have had really great success with it, from brain fog, vision, kidney, all these things. And I think everyone's different. So what one person is getting out of it, maybe someone else will benefit in other ways.
Yeah, and I think NAD also, Nick, you can pipe in on this one, works very synergistically with a lot of peptides. So I know BPC in combination with NAD makes the BPC work better, and KPV with NAD makes the KPV work better, because you're increasing the efficiency of the mitochondria, which helps use those other peptides better. So NAD kind of pairs well with a lot of the other peptides to increase the efficacy of those peptides.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so when you boil it down, any peptide you're using is turning on a set of mechanisms for regenerative purposes. So for those regenerative mechanisms to run, they need energy.
Yep.
So to boil it down, a little oversimplified, but the easiest way to think about it is NAD essentially magnifies the effect of any regenerative process.
I like that.
And, back to Daniela's point is that, different ways you can use it. I've turned a few people into patches because, I've always struggled with flying, whether it's 2 hours or 6 hours, just feel like garbage when I get off the plane. A couple months ago, I had to go to Europe for business, wore a patch on the plane. Even with the time change, I got off the plane, I felt like $1,000,000. Whereas normally, if I flew to Europe, I'm probably done for a day and a half before I'm really any use to anybody after getting off that plane. But, usual flying from the East Coast of the US to Europe, you leave here at night, you land there in the morning. So in theory, start your day. Normally, I would be like, dude, I need at least a day to go be useless. I landed. I was like, yeah, let's get going. I'm ready to rock. Like, holy cow, I feel amazing.
That's great.
Yep.
I love that. So if you're listening and you travel, or you have brain fog, or maybe anything that they listed, or overall just wellness, I like for anti-aging benefits and for overall wellness with NAD plus, because like you said, at 40 years age, you have
Half of what you had when you were
yeah.
born. So definitely increased mental and clarity, better sleep pattern, increased workout performance, healing potential.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen crazy things with neurodegenerative conditions and traumatic brain injuries, like crazy results with that stuff, Nick. So they kind of all fit in that category, So if you haven't tried NAD, you got to try it one time.
Yeah.
There is one other thing people can do if they're doing the patches is, so when you're supplying NAD to the cells, to the mitochondria, it's that big complicated process we talked about before, the Krebs cycle. So like any process, you can have rate limiting factors that depend on your health state, your diet, all that, right? Your environment. So the biggest one for most people is something called TMG.
Mm-hmm.
It's also called betaine. You can find it on Amazon under either name. So for most people, and I know I can personally feel a difference if I take about 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of TMG right when I put a patch on. I feel it a little more, and the only way I can describe it is it feels a little smoother. And for example, part of the reason why, in this case, what TMG is doing is, think of a car engine and an exhaust. The more restricted the exhaust is, the less power the engine can put out.
Mm-hmm.
So TMG has to do, people have probably heard of this now, especially with Joe Rogan and all these other guys, is methylation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So methylation is kind of related to a waste product, a waste byproduct process of energy production and other things. So TMG is kind of acting like a sponge and making the exhaust bigger on the car. So now your body can more effectively use NAD as well as run multiple other cellular processes better.
I love it.
I do too. And so if you're listening and you're interested in NAD plus, or you have questions for Nick, you can always DM us, and we'll have some information listed for Nick as well. But if you want to try our NAD plus patches with push patch, you can reach out to us. And if you're in our area, great. If not, we'll find you a doctor. But I personally love the patches myself because I experienced the injection and it was not my favorite thing to do. Thank you, Nick, for that. But
we are guinea pigs here.
Yeah. So, but I love the patches. They're awesome. And I feel like if people ever they need that coffee, you won't need your coffee with an NAD plus patch.
I agree with that. Yeah.
It's crazy, right? So you won't need your coffee. It's just like the craziest thing. So
yeah, I guess I'll pose this to Buzz. Coming back to injections, a lot of clinics where you do see them, it'll be something like 10 or 20 milligrams. And yeah,
he hit me with like 100 that day.
Yeah. So with NAD injections, there is a tolerance aspect. If your body's not used to seeing it, it doesn't know what to do with it. And you can be like hot and sweaty and this and that if you go too high. But what I've played with, and I'm wondering if you've ever done it, or it could be the sort of thing useful for you or other doctors, other clinicians, is if you have somebody who's really struggling for whatever reason, brain fog, energy, this, that, is combining the two. Because when you do a sub-Q injection, it's basically a quick short hit. You're going to feel it immediately, but the effect is going to last 30 minutes to an hour because it was just that one amount. Your body's going to burn it up, use it, and now it's gone, right? So what I do on occasion, if I just had a really crazy day and I'm like, dude, I'm only going to get to sleep 2 or 3 hours tonight, and I still got to be on point tomorrow. When I wake up, I'll do a sub-Q injection and then put a patch on, because with the patch, even if you're used to using them, even if you're Mr. Optimized, the reality is it can take an hour or a few hours for it to just really ramp up because of that slow, steady delivery. So if you want to get really fancy, you can do an appropriately dosed sub-Q injection right after you put the patch on or right before. So you kind of get to skip that initial ramp up stage.
All right. I like that.
Some biohack, That's some biohacking stuff there.
That is. All right. Get us directly to it. All right, cool. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Nick, thank you so much for being on today's show. We love you. We love talking about peptides. It is like the new hottest thing on the market. So I know you'll be on again because we have many more peptides to talk about.
It's always a blast. Right. Thank you for having me.
I know, and I will. All right, cool. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.